Theodore Roosevelt once said, "The credit belongs to the man who is actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood, who knows the great enthusiasms, the great devotions, and spends himself in a worthy cause, who at best, if he wins, knows the thrills of high achievement, and if he fails, at least fails while daring greatly, so that his place shall never be with those cold and timid souls who know neither victory nor defeat."
God, I love that quote so much. Joining me now, David Pietrusza. He is the author of a great book called TR's Last War. David, let's actually start there, because this is it's a part of Teddy Roosevelt's life that I love. Post-presidency, so it's not as sexy for most people, but this huge, horrific war breaks out in Europe. What did Teddy Roosevelt want to do about it?
Well, oddly enough, at first he wanted to stay neutral. And he's a very complex guy. And one of the great complexities or ironies is that for a guy who is so militaristic and jingoistic and all that, that the 7 or almost 8 years of his presidency is a time largely of America at peace. And he sort of starts out that way in 1914 by saying, "Oh, let's support the president and let's keep neutral." But that lasts about 5 minutes. And then after that, it's really not saying we should get in, but it's saying over and over and over again, we should be prepared if we get in. And maybe if we are prepared, maybe we won't have to get in. And maybe these German submarine attacks will stop if we are prepared. And Woodrow Wilson is another great contradictory figure, because he's like, "Oh, let's not do anything to get involved in Europe or to betray our neutrality." But in terms of Mexico, he's sending our troops down to chase Pancho Villa and our Marines into Veracruz and into Haiti and the Dominican Republic. And so TR is saying, let's be prepared. And Woodrow Wilson is actually saying, let's not be prepared. So you've got this great clash of wills and personalities going on. And eventually, TR is pretty much proven to be right, that we were not prepared. We were going into the war. You know, in World War II, we were the arsenal of democracy. And we were preparing, or we were sending all this stuff over even in World War I before we get in. But we're fighting in French planes, where we are fighting with British tanks. We are not prepared when we go in, and that costs us. One of the ways it's going to cost us, and it's going to cost TR personally, is when his own son goes in to fight. All of his sons go in to fight. His daughter, one of his daughters, goes overseas. TR has to stay home for a variety of reasons, but his youngest son is killed in the war. So he pays a terrific price for being that man in the arena.
How did he deal with that? It's obviously, as a father, I'm sure he wasn't celebrating. It would be the worst thing in the world to lose a son. How did he handle it?
Well, he's a Victorian. He is a stiff upper lip guy, and so that is the public face of his loss. He does not weep publicly, but boy, it really hits him hard. And as he's preparing to return to the presidency in 1920, you know, that's holding him back. That's one of the things, aside from his terrible health at that moment, or in the year leading up to that election, that he's lost what was dearest to him. That was not only his youngest son, Quentin, but also his favorite child of all of them. And he confides at one point to someone writing to him that he has paid a terrible price for advocating what he has advocated, which is to go into the war, and also for raising his children to have that life of service, to not shirk from the responsibility of the upper classes or even of all Americans to fight for their nation.
Why did he change his heart? Why did he think we should be involved in the whole thing? I don't know. It was very much not America's foreign policy back then. Americans today would find that odd because we have to go everywhere all the time, but it was not America's foreign policy then. Why did he eventually change his mind and think we should go and send his sons off?
Well, you take a look at what sets him off, and the great big first moment is when the Lusitania is sunk. He's on trial for libel at that point in Syracuse, and he's got all the reporters around, and he really blows his top at the Germans. Why? Because even though it's a British ship, even though it's going to be proven to be carrying munitions for the British war effort, sort of a breach of neutrality, you've got Americans who are killed in that, and you've got women and children killed. And being that great, as I say, Victorian 19th century figure, there's a sort of chivalry about him. And so that particularly upsets him. And the fact that we are not prepared. So he does want to go and fight. And even when Woodrow Wilson gets dragged into it for two reasons. One, which is the resumption of that unrestricted submarine warfare by the Germans. And also because the Germans are threatening to bring Mexico into our southern flank, southern border with the Zimmerman telegram. So there are a lot of reasons to go into the war. But, there's this underlying reason about Teddy Roosevelt, that the hero of San Juan Hill is, particularly in his pre-presidential years, quite the jingoist, where he's advocating for war against Germany in the 1890s or even against Britain, making statements that, hey, maybe it wouldn't be so bad if our eastern cities were shelled by enemy warships. That would teach Americans to be prepared and all that. And where he says to his sister, is this bad? Is this bad of me that I really want a war at this point? And so there is that element in him, and also a bit of a death wish, where he confides to his close friends that, to die in combat is almost the highest form of life. It is the ideal ending to your life, the culmination of all that, not just to fight, but to die. And it's a ultra heroism about him.
Did you enjoy that? If you did, we have a whole special on it, a whole special on Teddy Roosevelt, and all you have to do to watch it is go to thefirsttv.com/support. Go do that and enjoy yourself.